Welcome to the Penguin Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tate. We have a great show for you this week. The main event is Kent Axell Jr. We've had him on the show before to discuss his show at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, Ghost Stories. Well, that show is in its third year and getting rave reviews. Kent discusses the show, his co-star Tinkerbell, and adding immersive theater to your magic, as well as how to get a residency. I caught up with Kent via video chat, and now you get to join our conversation. All right, that's enough for me to get a screen grab. Here we go.
Cool. We did it. We did it. It got heated, apparently.
Kent Axell Jr., thanks so much for joining me here. Back on the Penguin Magic Podcast. Congratulations on the, what is this, the third or the 50th anniversary of Ghost Stories?
It may as well be the 50th. I'm putting a needle through my whole ass hand every show. So, Why
would you do that? You've got such pretty hands, sir.
I don't, not anymore, dude. Like, I've got you can't see it there. You see this? Yeah, you can see it. Oh. You can see the scar, the scarring, terrible. The bruising. It's horrible.
No, this is
awesome,
it's the third anniversary of the show, right?
Third anniversary, yes. We've been doing Ghost Stories.
It's at the Mandalay Bay, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
It is the Mandalay Bay, yes.
Because we
Mandalay
had you
Bay in beautiful, fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada.
We had you on when the show was just getting going, and now you're back. But it's turned it. So, tell our audience a little bit about the story, and then I'm going to shift subjects a little bit because I know this has turned into a whole other thing for you. So tell us a little bit about Ghost Stories.
Oh, sure. I'll tell you I'll give you a little blurb about me first. So, my name is Kent. I'm the founder of Unreal Productions and the creator of this show that we're talking about, Ghost Stories, an intimate seance show in Las Vegas. Team and I run training and development programs and one-on-one coaching for magicians, aiming to hold residencies and or to just tour and make their shows more theatrical and immersive. So currently, I'm on the third year of performing Ghost Stories 6 times-ish a week. Sometimes it'll be 8, depending. And we're working on 3 touring shows, including my own, and 3 residencies in Vegas, not including my own. And I've directed several successful magic shows and mind reading shows, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I can't drop any names here, but some of the best magicians and mentalists in the business right now credit me to vast improvements in their already existing shows. So, but I'm growing a YouTube channel and a Facebook group for anyone interested in more information about all of that stuff. So all the links will be around this video somewhere, or this audio somewhere. And my entire goal is to supply magicians with the skills needed to book their calendars fully and with the tools to tour for themselves or land themselves a residency. And my production company can help with all that if you don't want to do it all yourself. But I'm going to give you all the information for free, to the best of my knowledge, to the best of my ability.
Let's talk a little bit about Ghost Story, and then I want to switch to talking about immersive theater, because I think that there's more and more of that happening. But you had just started the show the last time you were on, so I'm interested in how the show has changed. I know you have a co-star in the show, Tinkerbell.
Yes, Tinkerbell used to co-star in the show, but now she is, based on liabilities, she is no longer allowed to perform in the show with me. So I unfortunately had to cancel her own residency in Las Vegas. Maybe someday. For context, everyone. So, you asked me to talk about the show, and I didn't do it. I talked about myself in a very scripted manner. I just wrote up a new one, so hopefully people sense that. Tinkerbell is my scorpion, and I purchased her in order to have her come out of my mouth at the beginning of the show, because the show's intro is very theatrical and very, very strong, in my opinion, unless people have their fucking phones on. But that's a different story. But Tinkerbell is her stage name is Isis, real name Tinkerbell, and the idea is that I appear in the center of the room. It's a very intimate space, and everyone's sort of half circled around the middle. So sometimes we do get gasps, although I just walk in the darkness. But Tinkerbell is a a scorpion, and the idea is that I'm appearing in front of somebody like 2 feet away from them, and then the first thing that happens is my mouth opens and she crawls out, and it's a lovely, lovely visual.
And I
I
have to say,
wanted more. Sorry, go ahead.
I do really appreciate Tinkerbell. The last time you and I saw each other was at Magic Live. We were in Stephen Levine, the IBM president's suite, and Tinkerbell had joined a group there. She was holding court.
Yes, she was.
But
She's
please,
a very well-behaved scorpion.
she's very well behaved scorpion. Please continue on a little bit about the show. I mean, that is a very powerful opening, even without Tinkerbell crawling out of your mouth. Just appearing out of the darkness, it creates a tremendous amount of atmosphere.
Yeah, the show in and of itself is the room in and of itself is kind of a character in the show. I mean, it's very. I hate to like flippantly use the word immersive because I use that word very specifically for the purposes of conversations with other magicians. But it's a very immersive environment that you're in. I mean, it's this it's it's designed as this whole metaphor between life and death, growth and stagnation. Um, it's a very organic slash intentional room, and it didn't get built that way intentionally. I mean, I find a lot of the times when you're building this kind of thing, you discover what it is while you're making it. You know, you just go with some aesthetic choice and you go as hard as you can, and then eventually you discover what it is. But the Ghost Stories room is very cool. So people sit in there and they sit to the voice of Vincent Price for a little while, talking about the occult, and then they're just enjoying the details of the room. And ostensibly they're in a half circle, so it's maybe 250, 270 degrees total on the sides. So most of the material has to be angle proof in this case, but or effectively angle proof. And the lights just at some point, Vincent goes into this intro, which I did with AI, which is wonderful, about like shutting off your phones and all that stuff, and some jokes in there, and then the lights flash. And then people, as a blinder, people get that in their eyes, and then the lights go out dark, come in quick, sit down in the middle, and then the lights come back up again in like 2 seconds. And it's startling for sure. And what I wanted to happen was for Tinkerbell to come out of my mouth and then to be sort of hanging on my face in front of the first person there. And everyone would see this happen. And then obviously they'd be jarred at that fact. But then the lights would go out again. And then people would wonder, and then I'd put her away, right, in a safe place. And then the lights would come back on a moment later, and I would just not mention her at all, and she would not be there. And what a wonderful feeling that would be. Where in the hell is that scorpion? So anyway, I'll tell you about Ghost Stories, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
So Ghost Stories, I would say that it's the way that I talk to it about lay people, and just to get them an idea of the vibe, is that it is I tell them it's a spooky magic show, depending on who I'm talking to. And then when they go, what? I go, think of it as a recreation of a Victorian seance. And then they go with that. Now, is it exactly that? No, not at all. But it gets it close enough in their mind, for sure. And so it's a show with a very specific background narrative that's going on underneath the surface for the entire thing to happen and work. There is a reason for all of the things that are happening. Whether those reasons were intentional or discovered as we were building them is different for every moment. But it is an immersive theatrical magic show based around sort of spooky themes. That's the simplest way to say it.
I'm curious, you mentioned earlier that you use the term immersive in a very intentional way. And I'm curious as to what your definition of that is, and like what you mean in your intention. And not to be pejorative or anything like that. It's just that I know that you have deeply thought about this, and I'd like you to express that thought so our audience can like actually get a sense of what it is rather than fill in with their own context.
Yeah, of course. So when I say immersive, what I mean very specifically is that you as the audience member are able to accurately describe your role in the theater, in the play. So now I totally understand, and it's a valid use of the word immersive to say the world that you're going into is fully developed for the show you're doing. Let's say, if you're doing Little Shop of Horrors and you have vines grow out all over the walls in the theater during the second half, that's immersive in a way because we're breaking the fourth wall. Most magic shows in that case are immersive in some way. In the same way that a comedy show, that a stand-up comedian would be immersive. But in when I'm thinking of immersion, I'm thinking of the story of the show and not and what the audience's role is in that story.
Mhm.
And I'll give you an example if it's okay.
Yeah, no, go for it.
So this might be a useful example. So D. Christopher is, as we all know, a wonderful mentalist out of the UK. And when I was on tour one time from Ghost Stories, he very kindly, actually twice now he's done this, which has been awesome. He very kindly has taken the show over for that weekend. Now, not doing my show, doing his show, Psychic Vampire. But since I really like immersive magic in the way that I describe it, I wanted to talk with him about getting the show to be a little bit more immersive. And now, what could that possibly mean? He's clearly going for a theme. He's clearly going for a specific feeling that the audience has. He's clearly going to. He's a vampire. How could it not be immersive? Well, the audience doesn't know what their purpose is in that space, aside from watching this show. Right. So if the audience thinks they're an audience, and that it's just that if they still have in their mind that the reason that they're here is because they purchased a ticket, and that they wanted to be entertained, and that's the only thing that exists in their mind as to their role in the space, then I think that is not immersive for the purposes of making magic more immersive. So what we had D after some brainstorming, we basically had him keep exactly the same show, but when he got into the center and leaned into to the person in the front and looked around the room, he just added the line, "So you all want to be vampires."
Mm-hmm.
And that, because the show was effectively proof after proof after proof of the fact that I am a vampire, which was an interesting thing to watch. It was fun. Just adding that line in the beginning allowed us to do proof after proof after proof, but couch it in the idea of this is the stuff that you're going to have if I choose you to convert. Right.
That's a really interesting idea. And I have to imagine that the audience takes Dee's unique approach to mentalism in a completely different way when they have that in their mind.
Yeah. Well, it just puts you in a position where you're like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
Like when you do an escape room, and it's like, I don't know, it's escape room, like, okay, you're in a kitchen and you have to get out of the kitchen, and like the handle of this knife is a triangle, and there's a triangle over there. Maybe I'll put that there. Like, that kind of makes sense-ish. But it's all very obviously a puzzle when you don't have an idea of what you're doing there. So now let's say you're doing an escape room and it's a prison, and you get like, the first thing you get is like a cupcake that the person hands to you, and then they close the doors and you're all in your cells, and the video plays, and the video says, to new inmates or something like that. And you're like, okay, we've done something,
Yeah.
And then you open up the cupcake and there's a note inside, and the note says, disregarding the lax security at this prison, the note says, okay, team, we pulled off the heist and you were all put in the prison just as planned. As we know, I spent 10 years here and I couldn't make it obvious, and I couldn't put it in this note because just in case they saw it, they'd take out the steps that I took to make sure that you guys could be free. So all I'll tell you is that it all revolves around that one little, that one little LED in the corner. and then you look up at that LED and it's blinking in a specific way, and then you're like, oh, whoever that is, set that up for us, his heist team, to know what the code was to open up this first lock, and then it's clear that you've got his intentionality throughout the escape room, and you are now in a position where you're like, okay, I understand what I am doing here. I understand why I'm here. This makes the whole thing more fun. So in Dee's example, when the show's opening and he's going, oh, so you want to be vampires? It's like, okay, we're in like an audition process.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's interesting. Okay, and it's just a little hack to like make a show, I think, in my opinion, more interesting.
Yeah, because I can see how some people might try and take this like really far to be like, no, I want the audience to be like completely immersed in the experience and believe that they're no, like, you don't even have to do that. It's just adding these little touches so that they can take it as far as they want to invest themselves in the show.
Yes. Yeah, this can be very dangerous. If it can be very dangerous if the show is not to a certain level of quality, unfortunately, right? And so like, if you're hammering on the idea that they are this thing, then there's a lot of nuance there. You're right. There's a lot of nuance.
It strikes me as something that it is very helpful to have a director when you're doing this, and not even a director who understands magic. It might even be better that they don't understand magic, that they more understand theater than magic, so that they can go, wow, you're hitting it a little too on the nose here, or you need to actually push this idea more so that you can start to evoke these feelings. Because what we are talking about is you said that at the beginning, it's theater, and so you're adding these theatrical elements to make the show more compelling.
Yeah. Well, magic is a performance art, and you have to start by being a good performer. I mean, it has to start there, and there are a lot of people who in the world who of magic, especially, who can help you with that. There are more people in the world of theater who can help you with that. Because I would say, maybe 10% of advice that magicians give you is advice you should listen to. Maybe 10%. And that includes me too. You should vet everything. I got the receipts, but even the receipts don't matter because context is everything. It's for each individual person. You got to find someone that you trust to help make sure that your show is ready for this kind of thing. Because if you're hammering too hard on the fact that they are that they're auditioning to be vampires, and the show then proceeds to not be able to cash that check. It can be dangerous, because it could be like, oh, it's just kind of feels campy and ridiculous claims.
Yeah.
But to be honest, in that particular example, the show's already kind of campy. I was asking in my first, sorry, my cat is rubbing his face on my laptop, and Darwin, hello.
We appreciate all animals on this show, and
don't get me into a vegan conversation.
No, we appreciate all animals on the show, and we appreciate them guest appearances. So thank you, Owen. We appreciate it.
That's Darwin.
No, that's Darwin.
Yes,
Darwin.
Isis won't be appearing.
Your podcast credit will be noted.
Yeah. So anyway, what I was saying was, with this particular example, one of the first questions that I'll ask people is, what do you want the audience to feel when you leave the show? If they've already got a show developed. If they don't have a show developed, then we work on some other questions. But if they've got a show developed, the question is, what do you want your audience to feel? And then once you start answering some of these questions, it makes it obvious what the answers need to be for the other questions. Like, okay, what's your opener? What's your middler? When you put boundaries a little bit around your creativity, and you say these are the touch points that I want to have, then it makes it so much easier to know what the right answers are. So the answer that was given there was, I want them to believe that they saw a vampire. And it's like, then you better eat someone.
Yeah.
And eventually we came down to, I just want them to have fun, because that made perfect sense to me. I want them to have had a really good experience and know that they saw a really good magic show.
I think you're asking very serious questions that I think many performers of all stripes and all levels in their career need to answer. And these are hard questions to answer, even if you're just doing like a comedy club set. Like, this is still a question that you need to answer in some fashion or another. And it
That's a
doesn't
piece of
have
theater.
to be a deep answer. It doesn't have to be like, I don't think it has to be like transformative in like, oh, I want someone to come to my comedy magic show and leave having an existential awakening about the atoms of the universe or something like that. But answering how you want the audience to feel when they leave is an important question.
Although some people do want that,
Yeah.
and it's a hard check to cash if you don't have a well written show
Mhm.
or or a good understand. I mean, that got into the ethics thing too, because you can do that if you're just like a psychic. You can give people the illusion anyway that they've experienced that kind of life transforming thing. But yeah, I've been on that train for a long time.
No, but you and I have very similar thoughts on the ethics of that kind of a thing. But thinking about it in like a theatrical sense, like
Mhm.
they can come to some conclusion about their place in the universe without it being an ethical conundrum, even if they're seeing a an improv show, for example,
Of
like a
course, of
theater
course.
sports style improv show.
Yeah.
It's possible to answer those questions in an ethical way. You don't
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
you don't have to fake being psychic.
Well, it's just, I want so I have hundreds of these conversations,
Mhm.
and one of the more common things that I've seen is that when people are like, I want the show to be really meaningful, and it's
Mhm.
like, so what tricks do I do? And it's like, let's back it up.
Yeah,
What
like
meaning do you want the show to have?
I think
What?
that's the question that is really hard to answer and requires the most self-reflection, is like, because just saying you want something to be meaningful is almost meaningless in and of it by itself, unless you understand the meaning that you want to convey.
It's a platitude. It's a
Yeah,
platitude.
yes,
And
yes.
I don't want to sit here and complain about magicians, because we could do that all day.
Oh, no. I
Every
think we're having a constructive conversation where because I think that kind of thing, it can be, you can have the same platitudes when you're designing a board game, let alone a magic show.
I literally, my computer is currently resting on Blue Moon Legends and Five Tribes, two very good board games. So I've got about 800 titles upstairs. You haven't visited me yet in Las Vegas, man. Let's nerd out.
Yeah.
Is that meant for me?
No, that wasn't meant for you. Stop. All right. So
Did your cat
my
just
Alexa
talk?
device. Yeah, that was Darwin. Actually, he's very feminine voice.
How do you find people? How do you help people towards answering that question of like,
I see you're talking
what is
about
the
my
meaning
voice.
that you
I'm like
want?
that friend who's always up for an adventure, whether it's planning a
Computer.
road trip.
Stop. Ask that again, please.
How do you help people towards answering this question of what kind of meaning do you want them to leave with when they give you an answer like that?
Well, it depends on my role with
Mhm.
them. If I'm acting as a director or as like a writing coach or anything in that realm, normally what I'm going to end up doing is asking more questions to them and then pressing against their principles as hard as I can until the principles either break or until they have some kind of breakthrough. And so recently that's been a lot around narrative and storyline, oh, I like the idea of this haunted box. Okay, well, why, what's the box, what does it do, what's the, what are we ending up with, what's the show now? The easier question to answer, which leads you toward meaning, is what is the show about? Because I ask that question to just about everyone who I talk to who has a magic show, and the the answer is not always forthcoming. Like sometimes they don't know the answer, and it's a very hard question to answer. But you'd think it'd be an easy question to answer because you wrote it and you do it, right? And if I asked you, what what Sweeney Todd is about, That's certainly a more complicated show than the magic show you're doing, but I can answer that question in one sentence, just a few words. And so,
It's what the correct recipe for a meat pie.
yes, that's right. And many people can't answer that question. And if they come down to some kind of simple answer, your show can be about a lot of things. It can be about finding your true self. It can be about uh, creating motivation out of nothing. It can be about changes. It can be about skepticism. It can be about a lot of things. You can, like many magic shows are very simple, and so it can come down almost to one word as a primary about. But when you get that answer, it becomes easier to approach the meaning answer. And so I will start with what's the show about, and then I will ask stuff about the materials and about the stories and about the flow of the show and how does it end. And when we're going through those questions, then we will eventually land on something that the show might be about. And if whether they've given that answer or not, we'll see if it aligns with the answer. And then once we have those answers, then it becomes much easier to figure out what the meaning of the show is. Now, your meaning might not be somebody else's meaning. If you have a meaning for your show that you're trying to portray, but somebody else takes something else from it, that's not a tragedy. But it just means that it's not even necessarily a bad thing, but having a meaning for your show and having intentionality behind the show is a very good thing to aim for. It never produces bad things, right? It always is a good idea to have some kind of intentionality for your show. And just to touch on that a little bit, the idea behind intentionality and what I mean by that is that every single decision you make and decisions that you don't make are decisions. If you find yourself, this is something you could only do internally. So the people that I'm interested in working with are only people who are honest with themselves, because there are so many. Okay, if you're honest with yourself and you're able to accurately answer questions and accurately describe where sort of the pitfalls are and where the gaps are, then you're a person that I'm very interested in working with, because they're a person that I can actually help. If you're a person that's going to make excuses for bad choices, then I can't help you. That has to start somewhere else. I'll give you an example. I was once doing a show in New York, and one of the guys that was there, he was asking me about his show, and he was asking me if I had any notes. And I was like, well, you didn't remember anyone's names. And I'm wondering if that was just because you were tired, or because, you only worked with like 3 people. And I'm wondering why you couldn't remember their names, because that seems like a very basic thing on my view, and to remember everyone's names that you work with. And I'm guilty of forgetting names once in a while, but I'm working with, there's about 25 active participants in the shows that I do, sometimes twice a night. So, I'm trying. It's a failure that sometimes I can't, and I'm willing to admit that. But what this guy said was, oh, my character can't remember people's names. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, that's because he's bumbling. Is what I asked the same question. Yeah, he said because he's bumbling, and I'm like, okay. It sounds like you just can't do performance magic, and you're finding ways of convincing yourself that you can. And that's something I said internally. I didn't say that to him. I wanted to be nice at the time. I'm a little less nice now, but but I it was just it's a good example of, I get about 10 of these examples a month where people answer questions like that, and it's like it's kind of just feels like to me like we're doing this instead of being honest. And the question that I always have for those people are, okay, well, if this is under your control, if this is a decision that you're making, then are you able to make the opposite decision and still do the show? So it's like, okay, so this guy, I asked him, could you do a show where like the next show I come to, could you just choose to remember everyone's names and then do that show? And I think the answer probably is no.
Mhm.
And there's several examples of this. I mean, in Richard Osterland is one of my favorite mentalists, method-wise. And hell, performance-wise, I love that he doesn't excuse it. He just says, yeah, you got to write it down for me to know what it is. That's it.
Mhm.
Like that's the answer. I have special mental abilities, and if you write it down, I'll know what it is. Like who cares? Like he's fine. But
I don't understand why this is, but my brain is connected to pencils.
Right. It's connected to pencils. And that's a cool thing, actually. When I was doing small interlude, when I was doing the Seance show, a bigger scale show in Las Vegas that I had written and directed the Seance part.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought in several other magicians to help me do this. And it was in Area 15 in the Lost Spirits Distillery. These other magicians, one of them, we were all doing a Q&A. And for many of them, it was their first time doing a Q&A. And I sort of walked and their first time doing PK touches, which, oh my God, did that feel good to put PK touches in the bucket of like 3 new magicians? Because when the first time they did it, they're like, there's no way, and it's like, yes. But we were all doing Q&A. And one of them came up with this wonderful, wonderful thing where he wasn't reading their thoughts. He was doing psychometry. So the bowl, he never touched the billets in the bowl. What he said, because he had someone else collect those and do the dirty work and all that stuff, and he never touched those billets. He only collected the pencils, and so he was doing psychometry. He had a bowl of pencils on stage with him and the bowl of billets, and he picked up one of the pencils and the idea was that, and he said this explicitly. He said, now, obviously, I would never touch or look at any of these things that you guys have put down here. But you guarded them very well. I saw, and you guarded them very well. The person who was holding the bowl, but what you guys didn't do was guard the pencils.
Mm-hmm.
You foolishly handed them all back to me. And then he picked one up and he started feeling this was held by somebody who, and then he went into it. And it was really interesting.
That's great.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, shoot, I was going, Richard Osterland, during one of his lectures on Penguin, he was asked why he moves around stage so much. Why he moves around stage like so much. He's always going from left to right and sort of running around sort of a bit frantically and always shifting his weight like this. And his answer was, do you ever see a rock star standing still? And I was like, bro, yes, I do see that actually. When they want people to pay attention to them and when they're doing the solo, they pop up and they just hold perfectly still and right. And that's something that I would suspect is challenging for Richard Osterland.
Yeah.
Now, not to do any special call outs because I love Richard Osterland. He's one of my favorite performers, but I think that he's good enough a performer that he would appreciate this feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That felt to me, as someone who's a theater guy, that like you're doing a thing that you can't really control, and because the decision has been made for you by your body, right? You're retroactively justifying the decision and saying that it's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's an incredibly important distinction. And it's not that you should necessarily change it because it might be working, but understanding
Correct.
The intention behind what's happening and turning it from something that just kind of happens into a motivated choice gives it a different, vibe or energy or the audience can feel that.
Absolutely.
And it can also affect other choices that you make much later on in the show.
I want to take a moment because of this to have people reflect on the power of stillness.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you intentionally slow yourself down, people will intentionally pay more attention. And I'm not doing this on purpose right now. I'm formulating the thought as I go. But if you're doing something on stage and your tendency is to be more manic and your tendency is to be more excited, then when you slow down and become still, it will have that much more power. And so if there's something that's really important to say in your show, then I would highly advocate slowing yourself down and training yourself to plant your feet through the entire thing. It's one of the first things that they teach in theater. And if you're the opposite, if you tend to be a little slower and a little more reserved and a little stiller, then I might recommend doing the opposite, because when you start moving around, when you get a little more excited, people are going to start paying attention more. It's going to sort of jolt them out. The juxtaposition will help generally, but the power of stillness cannot be overstated.
Oh, I completely agree. I know that in my own show, a lot of times I'm speaking very quickly, and the sort of elocution is part of the trick itself. The fact that I can speak very quickly and eloquently and with excellent diction is a big part of the it's a trick in and of itself in the show. But there are moments where I slow down, plant myself, and I'm very still in order to create a very dynamic contrast between the other portions of the show where that is helpful as a piece of misdirection or as a driving force in the comedy, versus when I want someone to, for example, look at a duck that's smoking a cigarette for whatever reason. But I definitely learned that in theater school as well, and learning to not pace and to be intentional about the movement around the stage is probably one of the more difficult things for a magician to do. Even though we think of ourselves as very in control of our bodies with our hands, I think that tendency to drift around on stage and pace is such an unconscious action that we don't realize we're doing it.
Yeah, you're copying what you've seen.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, a lot of the biggest names in our industry are not good generalized performers, and that is okay. That is
Yes.
that is not necessarily a criticism to any of those people, but I would just caution people to well, I mean, copy until you make it yours, whatever. But all of that kind of stuff aside, about actual like IP of magic tricks or scripting or whatever, that's a whole different conversation. Uh, but yeah, I would caution people against learning theatrical habits generally from the magicians that they like, because oftentimes you're going to be learning bad habits.
There's a really wonderful passage in the book Bossy Pants by Tina Fey about acting with Alec Baldwin on 30 Rock, and how, whatever you think of Alec Baldwin, he is a very gifted actor who studies his craft and thinks about it. And she talks about how, like, he hits marks and he uses his voice in really interesting ways, and he's still in some points and very gesticulative in other points. And I would encourage anyone to read that and then go back and watch 30 Rock. And even though he's playing this sort of gigantic character of Jack Donaghy, you can actually see how he's very intentional about the movements and actions and the way he uses his voice to make this character so brash and impactful.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy who, if everyone were active on the stage, he would choose to be still,
Mhm.
so that everyone's eyes would naturally be drawn to him.
Yeah. All right, I want to shift. I want to do a sudden and rapid shift in topic here, because you also help people get residencies. And
Yes.
can you discuss a little bit about A, what a residency is, and B, how you go about acquiring one?
So a residency is anywhere that you're going to be performing consistently, and whether that's once a week, once a month, or anything like that. I'm doing residency now in Vegas called Ghost Stories. This is why we're here. That's the third year, and this residency is a a good deal for me. And my whole goal is to help magicians who already have like very good shows get into residencies. So if your show is already good, I can help you with that. I'll tell you how to do it right here, like in on here live.
Mhm.
We can also, if your show is very good and you want any help with this process, then you can just reach out to me and I'll help you. But basically, and also I've got a, if you're not sure if you're not sure why you're unable to get a residency or not sure why, what is holding you back, and you would like a residency, I'm going to send you a link to this, basically the scorecard that I've created to help people figure out exactly what it is that they're missing in all of this system, and to be able to then address those problems.
Great. There'll be a link in the show
I'll
description below that people can click on and go for.
Yep, highly recommend doing that. It brings a very clear description of exactly what you're missing to be able to do this. So, from an overhead view, getting residency is just giving a deal that is accepted by someone who is an owner or a decision maker at a venue, such that you will be able to perform there on a regular basis. Whether this is with a contract or a handshake or whatever, ultimately it doesn't matter. And ultimately it's going to be, now, I mean, for me, I did Ghost Stories for 2 years without a contract because of certain variables made that possible, right? And so I am on a contract now. That wasn't even my choice. I don't care, because I know that the show is quality. There are people who want to have the show at their own venue, and so it's great to have somebody want to lock you in. It's a good feeling. At the same time, a contract comes with other problems, which is that now you're locked in. So if somebody gives you this a really good deal, they want to better deal you won't be able to take that offer. Not that I think I'll get a better deal, because things are going well. And tickets are selling. So selling tickets is a different story, although you need to be able to sell tickets. Having a good show is a different story, although you need to be able to have a good show. But in order to actually get someone at a venue to understand that having you there is a good idea, you need a foundational few things. So the few things that you need are a good pitch. That is primarily the thing that you need. The pitch includes these other things. So you need social proof. You need proof that you can do this. So if you don't have proof, you have to manufacture proof out of things that you have done. And you need you need to make it as easy as possible for the venue owner, right? You need to be as easy as possible for either the venue owner or the manager or whoever is giving you the go on this. There are more and less effective ways of doing any of the things that are involved in the more sort of articulated or specific, avenues to go down, like your social media presence, all that stuff. Like, all that stuff is something that we can dig into individually. But the long and short of it is that, let's say I'm talking to somebody who doesn't have any proof. They've never done a residency before, and they need to, let's say they don't even know what a good venue was, or what a good venue is to be able to do residency in their local location. In fact, I'm talking to somebody who is very much like that right now. Not my ideal person, because I would like them to already be in conversation with venues, and for me to help them understand what the venue is looking for, because sometimes the venue can't even articulate that. But basically what the venue is looking for is, how much are we going to make, and what's this going to cost me? And you can improve their view of how much it's going to make by having a good social media presence, by having good photographs, by having evidence that you are able to perform in front of crowds, right? That makes it easy for them to know that it's going to be a success. In their mind, if they look and they see, like, imagine, Copperfield's leaving. Copperfield is leaving MGM. He has a tremendous amount of proof. Now, there's other things that are going on in his life that may be related to what's happening right now, but let's just assume clean slate, right? He's in a vacuum. Copperfield leaves. It's not going to be hard for him to have a residency, because he's got a lot of proof that where he goes, he's going to have success.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you have no proof, if you just have your word, that's not enough. Right? Because if I'm at a bar and we've got a back room and we've got a good thing going, our margins might be really small, especially if it's a restaurant we're serving food, right? Our margins are in the back right now, rotting.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have to put any if I have to put any mental capacity, any thought into this thing that you want to do as a passion project, and I don't have proof that you have done it or can do it, there's no way I'm saying yes. No way. So to build that proof, if you have none of it, you have to do things, you have to get, if you have none of it and you don't have a relationship already with the person at the venue, because that's important too. If you have a relationship, if you're able to, um, man, this is also complicated to do on an overhead level because everything is dependent on the exact person and their exact circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say the person who owns the bar is your cousin and they love you. That changes everything.
Yeah.
Right. Let's say you've been doing close up at this bar for 2 years and they got a back room and you want to do a residency there and they know you and they love you. That changes everything. If everything is super cold, then you have to have proof, proof like Copperfield,
Mm-hmm.
right? You gotta be able to show them exactly what you've done before, not exactly how much money it made, but that it was successful. You got to do a couple of one-off shows so that you can get those photographs, get that media, get that video content going. And those things are not that hard to do. You can, in order to get that content, you can latch yourself onto other people's shows. There are variety magic shows, variety shows, burlesque shows that happen all over the place. There is no reason that something that goes into your pitch, and your pitch really just means, in my view, means your overall, the thing, not only the words that you're going to say to someone and the things you're going to show them, but it means when they look you up online, they're going to see things that they like to see in regard to this particular project that you're asking them to work on. So when I say your pitch, I just mean your social media presence is also your pitch. It doesn't matter if you have 200 or 2 million followers. If all you have on your social media page is like pictures of you and your kids, that's something, but it doesn't show me that you can successfully do a show and bring people out and draw people into my venue to buy drinks from my bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of what you're talking about is just sort of organizing, like all the things that people ask me when they go, how do I get started? How do I build my career in magic? And I'm like, well, are you doing this restaurant? Are you doing that restaurant? Are you applying to this theater or that theater? And sort of what you're talking about is taking it and collating that into sort of a nice package that you can easily hand to someone, again, just to take all of the decision-making process off of them, where they look at it and they go, well, yeah, I don't have to put forth very much energy. This guy's going to give me money. I just have to give him that room and let him do whatever he wants. And then at the end of the week, he brings me a couple $1,000 or whatever that is. I mean, it's a very easy, sell. Even if you're doing it like a restaurant residency, it's like, okay, well, the kids aren't running around and screaming because there's a magician who goes to the table and entertains them for a few moments.
Yeah, and everything that I've been talking about in the past couple of minutes has been for sort of a stage or show-based residency, which becomes a little more complicated. But if you've got a close-up residency, that is not complicated to get. But you do need to be willing to make the phone calls, and you do need to be willing to show up, and you do need to be willing to, look, the number one thing, if I want to work with somebody, is that they're actually willing to do the work. Because, man, I spent there's a very well-known magician, very well-known magician that a lot of people, I don't know, I would just say everyone respects in some way or another who has done a lot of good work. They're very prolific. They want to do more corporate work. They talked to me because I do a lot of it. I told them exactly what to do, and all the way down to doing a couple of charity events so that you can get the photographs that you need so that your photographs don't look like they're 35 years old, right? And I gave him, I was like, here is the way that you do this. Here are 3 different charity events that will all accept you as a performer. And it's a way for you to get in front of people who paid $1,000 to be in that room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means that they're business owners, they're wealthy people, they're whatever. Those are the people that you want to be hired by. And I handed him the contact information. I said, here's the contact information for the person. 3 months later, I said, how'd that go? And he never made the call.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like
getting photographs it seems like it's an insurmountable thing, but it's as simple as I did a wedding on Friday, and there was a wedding photographer, and I walked over and I said, "Can I have your business card? Here's mine. I'd like to buy some of these photographs that you're taking of me with the bride and the groom doing these things." And suddenly
Mm-hmm.
I've got recent photos taken by a professional, and all it cost me was a business card and 5 minutes of my time to do a card trick for her, and I came away with gorgeous photographs.
Yes, and I like the keyword that you use there for me. I
Mhm.
mean, the fact that you put that effort in is huge. One of the key words that you just used is the word "buy,"
Mhm.
because that probably made her eyes light up in the back, like because eventually she probably ended up just giving them to you, I
Oh yeah,
imagine.
yeah.
But the- but that deference that you offer to that person, your what you're doing is valuable, and what you're doing is valuable to me, and I recognize its value, and I will buy it from you. It's not going to
It's the
cost you an
same
arm and
as
a leg.
it's the same as your pitch for your residency when you say like, I really want to rent this venue so that I can
Yes.
do this. Like not just, hey, give me the space. It's applying value to what they're bringing to the table as well.
Yes. And let's actually start there. Let's go back there because
Mhm.
I feel like I'm circling the drain a lot on what you need to begin these conversations with people. And the reason that I'm doing that, and I hate to do this, I want to give I want to give people a very specific route to go down. But the problem is that everyone's going to have a slightly different route that they have to go down to make this work. And so basically you need the proof that you can do it. You need to, and included in that is the empathy to understand what the person you're talking to will accept as proof,
Mhm.
right? My word should be proof is not good enough, right?
Yeah.
You need the proof that you can do it that's going to make them money. And you need, well, I would say to make it successful, you need a good show. And then you need to be able to follow up with them and actually take the steps to make it work. The steps to make it work are often just a phone call and setting up some ticketing platform or whatever, and then starting advertisements. It's
Yeah.
very simple. It's not complicated from an overhead view. But one way that you can circumvent proof is to rent what you just said.
Yeah.
If they want a two wallet with you and whatever, and it's like, okay, I need one of your employees to help me with like seating people, and I need one of your people to help me, gather people as they arrive in this space because me and my partner are going to be setting up the show in this space or whatever. If you just rent, then that changes everything. If you say, I just want to rent the room for a little bit, that could be actually the best possible deal for you. Because let's assume that they end up doing really well. And let's say it's a really small, just for easy math, let's say it's a really small residency. Let's say you've got 10 seats in there, right? And you charge $100 a ticket. That's $1,000 in the room packed out, right? A very high class VIP close up magic show, right? And let's say you sell it out every night. You make $1,000 a night on tickets. That's not including drinks and stuff, obviously. Venues like a lot of people, they like them for free because they like to sell drinks. But let's say the venue says, okay, we can do this because we're good at advertising. We're going to give you the room and we'll give you $200 to do the show, right? At the end of the day, if renting the room would have cost you $200, let's say, but they say we're going to give you $200 to do the show, then you're making 200 instead of 800, assuming that you're the one that would do the work that they're doing. So you might be, if you're willing to do the advertising and do all of that legwork and set up systems for yourself, which by the way, I can absolutely help you do.
Mhm.
If you're willing to do that work and you're willing to just straightforwardly rent the room and take the risk, then that's really great for a venue to hear. They have to understand that you're doing a show, that you're doing a ticketed event. They have to understand the logistics behind that. They have to know, where are people going to line up if they show up early? Can they come in the room? Do they go to the bar? Maybe it's better if they go to the bar. Then they can order a drink to bring in to the show. And obviously, I've just been talking on a bar and restaurant level right now. If you're talking about a theater, you might have a different rule for a theater. You might have a different rule, a different setup or a different contract or agreement for a Victorian mansion that is local to your resident to your home that you can set up folding chairs in their parlor room and do a show for, for 60 people at a time. These are all going to be different things, and it's all going to be relative to the person I'm talking to and the resources that they have available to them, whether they know it or not. And sometimes you're in a rural town and you don't know where to begin, and sometimes you're in a city and you don't know where to begin. But I guess you'd begin with just you'd begin with finding the venues that you want to contact, or deciding what kind of show you want to do and seeing what venues align with that show. If you've got a straightforward magic show, if you've got, here's the stuff that Kent is currently working on, I would find a way to title and package that show so that it feels more like a product and less like a less like you're winging it. And then just, you can pitch. That seems kind of like a universal thing that you can pitch everywhere. You can pitch that to bars, restaurants, or Victorian mansions. And
I like
but
how
so
this
we're giving an
conversation is
overview.
revealing that you grew up in an area with a lot of local Victorian mansions.
Yeah, there were it was about 90% Victorian mansion where I was. Actually, we had to drive through a Victorian mansion to get to the grocery store.
I think it all sort of comes back to what you were talking about, was you need to be able to show them social proof, have empathy towards what they need, and then try and make it as easy as possible for them. And all of these sort of aligning what your show is with their venue and your vision and everything like that really comes down to just making it as easy for them as possible to say yes. And I really like what you're talking about with social proof and coming up with a way to show them, to take away all the no's, so that they just go, yeah, no problem, have fun, do it, and we'll settle up later. So it's
I would also sorry, just as a thing, because I felt us entering into the negotiation phase of the actual deal. I would highly recommend several things, but like, as a starting place for people, I would highly recommend looking into Chris Voss and his negotiation books. He has a book on negotiation called Never Split the Difference, which is a really incredible book. He was a FBI international hostage negotiator, and he wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. I would use everything from that book on a daily basis if you're able. Basically, it's a communication masterclass. And the second thing is, the channel Charisma on Command comes to mind. It's a guy out of Las Vegas. It's a YouTube channel called Charisma on Command, where you can just learn how to be more charismatic when you're speaking to people, and that goes a long way in terms of whether people like you or not, whether they get a good vibe off of you or not. Goes a long way in terms of whether they're willing to say yes to you or engage with you in this kind of deal.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Kent, for joining us on the show. We're about out of time here. We'll have you back on again, because I know you've got a lot of really good advice.
It feels like it flowed, man. We did an hour of content in no time, and I kind of feel a little bad, because I feel like we just kind of like circled the drain a little bit on specific advice. But you know what? Next time you get me on, I'll have a particular type of person in mind. This is a goal that I'll have. I'll have a particular type of person in mind and their situation.
Yeah.
And so, and then we will just literally walk through what they have to do step by step in order to get their first residency.
Yeah.
Now, and we'll literally do it this way. If you follow these steps, you will get it. That's what we'll do next time we talk. And the way that I'm going to know who that person is only by feedback from the community.
Yeah.
So I know what my standard client is in terms of this kind of conversation. If we could have people these go up on video, right?
Yeah. These go right up on YouTube.
So, okay. So on the YouTube channel, if we could have people comment about what kind of residency they want, and what kind of performer they are, and what kind of what kind of like venues they have around them, or like I'll put some questions for you that you can put in the description that people can answer.
Great.
Or maybe even I'll put a link to another questionnaire. If
Yeah.
people can click on that or leave comments about what their current situation is, then I'll just collate that data into the most likely person that listens to this podcast who wants a residency, and that's the person who I'm going to talk to next time we come on.
I think that's a great idea. I look forward to that as
Yeah.
a follow-up. Let us know in the comments your residency, and we'll come back and we'll walk you through it. Kent, thanks so much for joining us on the show, and say hi to Tinkerbell for me.
I will. I'll say hi to Tinkerbell. It's Tinkerbell, but you just said Tinkerbell, which is like a really. I might call her that if she ends up with a mentalist residency.
Oh, fantastic! Take care, Kent.
We're gonna see you later.
That's going to do it for this week, kids. Thanks so much to Kent for being on the show, and thanks to you for listening. Well, as you are listening to this, I am landing in Vancouver for the PCAM convention, then rushing back to Columbus to host shows at the P3 Magic Theater, then back out west to Los Angeles to perform and lecture in the Close-Up Gallery at the Magic Castle, April 3rd through the 12th. I'm looking forward to seeing all of the Penguin fans there. As always, we're a weekly podcast, so be sure to like and subscribe, as well as share your favorite episodes on the social media platform you're watching a VTuber dress up like a penguin or a peanut and play Arc Raiders on. If you want to reach out to me about anything on this week's show, you'll have to send it to me via Whisper on Twitch, because I am doing some very weird things in streaming right now. But if streaming content isn't your cup of tea, you can always hit me up on Instagram at Eric Tate. That's at ERIKTAIT. From me and everyone else here at the P3 Magic Studios, practice, perform.